The atmosphere inside the View studio buzzed with its usual mix of chatter, bright lights, and the anticipation of another lively segment. Everyone expected a simple, upbeat celebrity interview. Nothing controversial, nothing explosive, just a feel-good conversation with a music legend. Reba McEntire, often crowned the queen of country music, had taken her seat with effortless grace. Before we begin, tell us where are you watching from, also subscribe. Her unmistakable red hair glowed under the studio lights, styled to perfection, and her sleek black blazer added an extra layer of authority to her presence. She was there to promote a new album and chat about her latest projects. Easy enough, or so everyone thought, but across from her sat Joy Behar, who never entered a conversation without a spark in her eye and a willingness to pour gasoline on it. Joy leaned in with that signature smirk seasoned viewers immediately recognized. The "I'm about to start something" look. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, watched with interest, though even they didn't know what was coming. "So Reba," Joy began, her tone cheerful but edged. "You've been in show business for decades. You've watched the industry transform. What do you make of all these young artists today who seem more focused on follower counts than actual talent?" Reba's polite smile stayed in place, but a flicker of sharpness entered her eyes. "Well, Joy, every generation connects with fans differently. These younger artists are extremely talented. They're just using new tools to reach people. Tools we didn't have back then." Joy didn't let it go. "But don't you think social media has cheapened the art form? I mean, nowadays anyone with a phone can claim to be a musician. Back in your day, you actually had to earn it." The air in the room shifted. Whoopi shot Joy a subtle warning look, but Joy was already leaning in further. Reba's voice stayed warm, but her tone gained weight. "I have to respectfully disagree, Joy. Talent is talent. Some of the most gifted performers I know got their start online. The heart of music hasn't changed just because the platforms have." Joy waved a hand dismissively. "Reba, come on. You can't seriously say a kid lip-syncing on TikTok has the same artistic value as what you built your career on. There's entertainment, and then there's art." The audience murmured. The host shifted uncomfortably. Reba lifted a gentle hand, signaling she wanted to answer. "Joy, I'm curious," she said, her Oklahoma accent slipping in as it often did when she was irritated. "Because last I checked, you were a comedian before you were a talk show host. And comedy, like music, comes in many forms." A loud ooh rose from the audience. Joy's posture stiffened. "Well, I never claimed to be an authority," Joy snapped, though her voice betrayed annoyance. "I'm just saying there's a difference between paying your dues and famous because a video went viral. Paying dues," Reba repeated slowly, her voice now carrying that unmistakable warning tone familiar to anyone raised in the South. "Joy, honey, let me tell you something about paying dues." The studio fell silent. I started singing in smoky honky-tonk bars at 16. I was lucky if I made $20 a night. I drove across states in a beat-up car, slept in truck stops, sang for crowds so small you could count them without taking off your shoes. So when you talk about paying dues, trust me, I know what that means. Joy crossed her arms. "I'm not questioning your dues, Reba. I'm talking about these new artists who get millions of followers overnight and suddenly call themselves musicians. That's not how this business works." Reba's composure cracked just a little, enough for the audience to feel the spark. "And I'm telling you," she said firmly, "no one gets millions of followers overnight. Those kids work 18-hour days creating content, writing songs, practicing, engaging with fans, shooting, editing, doing it all themselves. Just because their work looks easy to you doesn't mean it is easy." Whoopi tried to cut in. "Maybe we should." "No, Whoopi," Reba said, eyes locked on Joy. "Let me finish." The crowd roared. "I've spent over 40 years in this business, and I've learned that respect goes both ways. I respect any artist who puts their heart into what they do, whether they're performing on the Grand Ole Opry stage or singing into a phone camera in their bedroom." Joy leaned back slightly, finally realizing she may have pushed the wrong person, but her pride held her in place. "I'm just saying there's something valuable in the traditional path," Joy continued. "Working with labels, building a career with real professionals." Reba didn't look away. "And I'm saying the path doesn't matter nearly as much as the passion." Joy narrowed her eyes, clearly gearing up for another counterpoint, but before she could speak, Reba leaned forward, her voice calm yet undeniably commanding. Joy, the industry isn't the same as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, Reba continued. Back then, you needed a label just to get your foot in the door. You needed radio, you needed executives telling you what you could and couldn't sing. These young artists, they don't need permission anymore. They can succeed on their own terms, and I think that's incredible. Sunny nodded in agreement but stayed quiet, sensing the tension still sizzling between the two women. Joy crossed her legs, lifted her chin, and smirked. Well, I still think talent means more when you work with professionals. These kids are skipping the whole learning process, and they get famous before they even understand the business. Reba gave a slow, patient smile, the kind a mother gives when she's about to school the entire room. That's where you're wrong, Joy, she said gently. They do understand the business. They run it themselves. She gestured with her hands as she spoke. They are the singers, writers, producers, editors, marketers, publicists, directors, all rolled into one. They're building fan bases from the ground up with no safety net and doing it in a world way harsher and faster than the one you and I started in. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, arms folded, watching them like someone monitoring a campfire to make sure it didn't jump the pit. Joy didn't like being corrected, especially not on national television. Well, Reba, forgive me if I don't bow down to a teenager with a ring light, she said, letting out a sarcastic laugh. Reba didn't flinch. Joy, she said calmly, you don't have to bow down to anyone, but you do need to acknowledge that the world changes. And artists evolve with it. That's how this industry survives. Sarah, sensing the moment escalating again, tried to jump in with a soft, maybe we should, but the audience was already hanging on every word, and Reba wasn't letting go of the moment. You know what I love most about these younger artists, Reba said, turning slightly toward the audience? They're brave. They put themselves out there every day for millions of strangers to judge. They handle criticism most grown adults couldn't tolerate. That takes guts. A ripple of applause moved across the studio, but Joy held firm. Courage is great, Reba, but it doesn't replace skill. Reba turned back to her with a slow, steady look. And who decides what skill looks like? You, me, the internet, a record label? Because last time I checked, audiences decide who they love, and audiences today happen to love artists who started online. Alyssa nodded. That's true. A lot of today's biggest stars came from YouTube, TikTok. Joy shot her a look that instantly silenced her. Reba continued, the way I see it, there's room for everybody. Room for the legends, room for the newcomers, room for the ones who take the traditional route, and room for the ones who rise from social media. Music isn't a competition for who struggled the hardest, it's a connection. If someone's voice reaches people, then they've earned their place. The audience applauded louder this time, clearly siding with Reba. Joy exhaled sharply, tapping her fingers on the desk in frustration. Well, maybe I just missed the old days, she muttered. Reba softened for the first time since the argument began. I miss them too sometimes, she admitted, but I also love seeing the future. And these kids, they are the future. They deserve a chance. The same chance we got. The camera zoomed in on Joy, who looked like she had a dozen comebacks swirling in her mind, but no way to say them without igniting. Another explosion. Whoopi finally stepped in, clapping her hands together. All right, ladies, before one of you ends up throwing a cowboy boot or a coffee mug across the table, how about we breathe and move on? The audience laughed. Reba chuckled and leaned back in her seat, the tension slowly dissolving. Joy forced a tight smile, though her eyes still flashed with irritation, but everyone watching, in the studio and at home, knew they had just witnessed one of the most unforgettable clashes in The View history. As the studio audience continued applauding and the segment cut to commercial, the upbeat music playing over the speakers did nothing to soften the tension still crackling in the air. The moment the cameras faded to black, Reba relaxed her shoulders and exhaled, slowly but with purpose. Meanwhile, Joy immediately reached for her coffee mug, taking a long sip as if trying to wash down everything that had just happened on national television. Whoopi stood up first, giving the producers a look that said, yeah, y'all saw that too. Sarah was visibly rattled. She leaned toward Sunny, whispering, that wasn't just awkward, that was historic. Sunny nodded. Joy picked the wrong day to challenge a country icon. Joy set down her mug with a thud. Well, she said sharply, that got a little out of hand. Reba, who was gathering her note cards, turned to her with a soft smile that carried more grace than most people could muster after a televised showdown. No hard feelings, Joy, we just come from different worlds. Joy forced a thin smile. Different worlds, sure, but I still think I had a point. Reba tilted her head, and I reckon I did too. Whoopi clapped her hands once, loudly to break the tension. Ladies, can we save round 2 for after lunch? Please, my blood pressure can't take another episode like that. A few crew members laughed nervously. The energy was still charged, but at least the ice had cracked. Reba headed toward backstage, her publicist trailing behind her with a relieved sigh. You handled that beautifully, the publicist whispered. Reba shrugged. I wasn't about to let her disrespect a whole generation of musicians. Those kids worked too hard to be dismissed. Meanwhile, Joy stayed in her seat, flipping through her cards, her jaw tight. Alyssa approached gently. Joy, you know the internet is going to have a field day with this, right? Joy rolled her eyes. Let them. I'm allowed to have an opinion. Sunny raised a brow. Of course you are. But Reba wasn't wrong either. Joy didn't respond. Instead, she stared at the stage floor as if reconsidering her own words, or maybe just plotting her next comeback. With Joy, it was always hard to tell. The corridor behind the studio was buzzing. Staff members exchanged wide-eyed glances, whispering like students after an unexpected classroom fight. One stagehand muttered, I thought Joy was gonna get lassoed right there on stage. Another replied, Reba didn't even raise her voice. That was the scary part. Reba's assistant tried to lighten the mood. Well, she's from Oklahoma. She's wrestled bigger storms than that. Reba chuckled as she overheard it. Just then, Whoopi walked in behind her. For the record, Whoopi said with a grin, you handled Joy better than half the people who've sat in that chair. Reba nodded warmly. I appreciate that, but I wasn't trying to fight her. I was trying to make her see something she's missing. Whoopi shrugged. Joy doesn't always see what's in front of her. She sees what bothers her. It's a talent, but also a disaster. They both laughed. One viral post read, Reba McEntire just gave Joy Behar a masterclass in southern elegance and subtle destruction. Another said, Joy woke up today and chose chaos. Reba woke up and chose dominance. Within minutes, the studio control room phones were ringing non-stop. A producer looked at the ringing lines, eyes wide. Okay, we're officially trending in 7 countries. By the time the next segment was ready to go live, the atmosphere had completely changed. Everyone felt the weight of what had just happened. Joy finally broke the silence. You all can stop staring. I'm not made of glass. Sarah smiled politely. No one thinks you are. It was just intense. Joy sighed, shaking her head. Reba's tough. Tougher than I thought. Sunny chimed in. She didn't attack you, Joy. She defended others. That's why people connected with her so much. Joy didn't respond, but for once, she didn't argue. Reba walked back toward the stage for the final sign-off, shoulders relaxed, face warm and composed, as if she hadn't just delivered one of the most iconic moments in the show's history. And when the cameras turned on again, she smiled like nothing had happened. But everyone watching knew something unforgettable had just taken place. Joy tried to busy herself with her note cards, but the tension still lingered like leftover smoke from fireworks. Reba walked toward the next segment's stage marker, smiling warmly at the crew members who passed her. No one knew whether to congratulate her or tiptoe away, so most of them simply stared. Behind the cameras, the producers scrambled, whispering frantically into headsets as they tried to keep up with the explosion of social media activity happening in real time. Clips of the confrontation were already everywhere. Someone rushed up to Whoopi with a tablet showing a TikTok that had gone viral within minutes. Whoopi's eyes widened as she muttered, Lord have mercy, they're remixing it already. Reba glanced over with a soft laugh. Remixing? She asked. Whoopi just handed her the tablet. There on the screen was a clip of Reba saying, Joy, honey, looped over a heavy bass beat like it was the intro to a country rap's diss track. Reba put a hand over her mouth, trying not to laugh. Whoopi shook her head. Internet moves faster than gossip in a choir. Reba handed the tablet back. Well, if they're gonna make music out of it, I'd at least like a writing credit. Joy, who overheard this from her seat, rolled her eyes. Great, she muttered under her breath. Now I'm a meme. Alyssa sat beside her, speaking gently. Joy, people are just reacting. "It'll blow over." Joy scoffed. "Oh, please. Nothing blows over anymore. It festers. It becomes a hashtag. I'll probably get 5 angry think pieces by dinner." Sunny, sitting on the other side, gave her a measured look. "Joy, you pushed Reba harder than most guests." She pushed back. "That's all. People like authenticity." Joy ran her fingers along the edge of her note cards. "Authenticity? Yes. Being roasted by a country superstar on live TV? Not so much." Backstage, a group of interns were huddled around their phones, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Did you see the clip where Reba said respect goes both ways? That's going to be quoted for the next 10 years. Joy looked like she got hit by a tornado. Reba didn't raise her voice once. That's scarier than yelling. Joy shot them a glare so sharp they instantly scattered like startled pigeons. Reba walked back toward the table to finish the episode, heat from the studio lights glowing against her auburn hair. She offered Joy a polite smile. Joy returned a stiff nod, her pride still bristling, but something in her expression had softened. Not much, but enough to show she was processing everything. As the cameras turned on again and the theme music played, the energy was strangely calm. Whoopi kicked things off with her usual charm, trying to restore a sense of normalcy. Reba answered a few lighthearted questions about her new album, and the hosts navigated the conversation with exaggerated politeness, each one making sure not to ignite another spark. Meanwhile, the internet was already dividing into camps. Comments on Twitter ranged from fierce support to equally fierce criticism. One user wrote, "Reba just became the new queen of the View for that clapback," while another countered, "Joy is allowed to criticize social media culture. Reba got too defensive." Facebook threads were even more chaotic, with hundreds of people arguing, most of whom hadn't even watched the show. On Instagram, someone posted a freeze frame of Reba saying, "Joy, honey," with text over it reading, "When someone tries you and forgets you're from Oklahoma." That post hit 1 million likes in under an hour. By the time the final segment wrapped, the producers were practically buzzing with adrenaline. As the studio lights dimmed, Reba stood adjusting her blazer. "Well," she said to no one in particular, "that was something." Whoopi laughed and patted her shoulder. "You handled yourself with grace. And I don't say that lightly." Reba smiled, then turned to Joy, who was gathering her things with a bit more force than necessary. "Joy, no hard feelings," she said gently. Joy paused, her expression a complicated mix of stubbornness and reluctant respect. "You know," she murmured, "you're tougher than you look." Reba winked. "So are you. That's why we both survived this business." Joy snorted, unable to hold back a small laugh. "Well, but I guess next time I'll pick a less feisty country singer to challenge." Reba leaned in just slightly. "Oh, honey, they're all feisty." Joy actually laughed at that. A real laugh, not the sarcastic kind, and some of the tension finally melted enough to let the moment breathe. As the crew began tearing down equipment, Reba waved goodbye and headed toward the exit. The instant she stepped into the hallway, her phone buzzed non-stop with notifications she hadn't even checked yet. Joy watched her leave, then looked down at her own silent phone, bracing herself for whatever storm awaited her. "Well," she muttered, "time to see how badly Twitter hates me today." Whoopi sighed dramatically. "Joy, Twitter always hates you. It's practically their hobby." Joy rolled her eyes. Comforting. The cast and crew slowly dispersed, but everyone knew the episode they had just filmed wouldn't just be another day at the office. In the hours to come, the world would replay every second, argue every detail, and take sides with the passion of a full-blown cultural debate. And for better or worse, Reba McEntire and Joy Behar had become the center of it all. If you like this video, then subscribe.